Welcome to ESG Decoded, where we navigate the evolving landscape of environmental, social, and governance, ESG. Join me, Amanda Shea, and Erika Schiller as we explore the intersection of sustainability, innovation, and ethical leadership.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to ESG Decoded. I'm your host, Erika Schiller, and today we have Emma Cox joining us to talk about New York Climate Week. Emma is a senior leader at ClimeCo and has spent several years visiting New York Climate Week, which happens in September, aligned with some UN meetings around climate. So, Emma, it would be great if you could share a little bit about Climate Week. What is the event and why are we talking about it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Erika. Happy to be here today. This is fresh on my mind. And we were very lucky at ClimeCo to have pretty significant representation at Climate Week this year. And as you noted, Climate Week does happen at different places around the world. And so this New York Climate Week in particular, which happens at the end of September, is the largest climate week and typically is a precursor to COP, which happens later on in the fall. So this year's theme was It's Time, which I think we can all of us in this industry can relate to that theme. It sort of reflects on, the very urgent need for action as global temperatures continue to rise. And we are surpassing the sort of critical threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius. So that sense of urgency was definitely present this year at Climate Week. Another thing to note about Climate Week is that it is the 15th anniversary of New York Climate Week. And I looked up a few stats prior to today about Climate Week. I guess there were 600 events over the course of the week, including seminars, workshops, even protests as events across all 5 boroughs of New York City. And I believe this year was a record attendance of over 6,500 participants from over 100 countries, and with notable leaders like President Biden, who, as you noted, was there for the UN General Assembly in New York City as well. But I know he spoke at a few Climate Week events as well. So lots of action at Climate Week. One of the things that I personally love about Climate Week in comparison to some other industry events is that there is a real diversity of perspective and thought represented based on how it's organized. So if you're not familiar with Climate Week, anyone, any company can organize an event for Climate Week. So I saw, different companies organize very sort of formal panels with corporate leaders speaking on these panels. I saw corporate communicators and influencers organizing, influencer and communications themed cocktail parties. I attended an event with a celebrity who was talking about his climate action organization that he had founded and was excited to talk about at that event. So really a wide array of thought and perspective and different types of stakeholders participating in Climate Week. So that was, although a logistical nightmare to travel across 5 boroughs over 5 days, was really fun to be able to sort of, as an attendee, curate your own experience.
That's great. Thank you so much, Emma, for that context about, how big it is, what the attendance and the types of conversations are. It sounds, because there's, no formal one conference location, you can have an event across the city and get a lot of different experiences kind of focused on what your interests are. I know on our ClimeCo website, we had tried to create a repository of the different events that we thought would be interesting for both our employees and our customers and colleagues. And it was quite an extensive list, right? So you definitely have to be selective about how you spend your time there. But I was hoping you could share about some of the key themes that you thought kind of stood out to you. We discussed ahead of time that there are a few different key themes that have been evolving over time, but becoming potentially increasingly urgent.
Yeah, I think having attended a few of these Climate Weeks before, I'm always interested in seeing sort of how specific topics or themes evolve over time, right? So one theme or topic that I have consistently seen come up in not only recent years, but the last 10 or so years has been the topic of Scope 3 decarbonization, which is an ever important and ever evolving focus for companies and also ever present challenge. And so what I have been seeing over the years is an evolving landscape of solutions for how to address Scope 3 decarbonization because it represents such a large portion of emissions we need to address. And so this year, I would say the theme around Scope 3 decarbonization was twofold. One being in technology. I saw and attended a number of events around solutions that are being developed around how we map supply chain data, even. I think data is always going to be a challenge for companies trying to reach their climate goals, but especially around Scope 3, where there are many, many layers we're trying to unpeel. And so just getting a handle on the data is a challenge. And so there are a number of tech solutions out there and even AI that are trying to solve for this Scope 3 decarbonization challenge that everyone is facing. And so it was exciting to see some of those demos live and to see companies talking about how this is helping them really pinpoint hotspots. And even with the trending topic of insetting being another solution that was discussed this year at Climate Week as a very real solution to Scope 3 decarbonization, insetting needs good data. And so these technology platforms spoke to, how they could work with insetting as a solution to start making real progress. So that was a very exciting thing to see, Erika, especially in our space. I think we can appreciate good data as well.
Can you share a little bit about what you mean by insetting, just in case some of our listeners don't know?
Sure. So we've all I think most of us have heard of the term offsetting, which refers to offsetting your emissions outside of your value chain. Insetting is simply addressing the emissions within your value chain and decarbonizing within your value chain. So it's a similar concept, but the difference is that you're not offsetting with a project that is outside of your value chain. So we're even talking to clients right now about how we approach decarbonization with a hybrid model, not just rely on insetting, not just rely on offsetting, but how do we do it together to sort of identify opportunities for funding and real impact.
So an example being, let's say I'm a clothing manufacturer and I use trucks to deliver my clothes to the retail stores. If I had, and I don't own those trucks, right? But I that's part of my Scope 3 is the delivery via those trucks. So if I paid the truck owner to use renewable fuel or an electric car to deliver, so there's lower emissions, then I might pay for those emissions reductions, and that would be within my supply chain.
Absolutely. That's a great example.
Okay, so we heard Scope 3 decarbonization was a key theme. The next theme was around the voluntary market. Did you want to share about that one?
Absolutely. Yes. So this was exciting for me and for many of us at ClimeCo to see. The VCM really did take center stage at Climate Week. It even got its own VCM day for the first time. And so, I think there is really a growing and renewed belief that sort of new measures to ensure validity and authenticity, the VCM can play a really, really important role in global decarbonization strategies. So it was fun to see companies talking about that and acknowledging the voluntary carbon market as an important and essential mechanism we need to decarbonize and to make progress now. I think we can all acknowledge that the VCM has gotten a little bit of a bad rap over the last few years, just due to sort of a lack of standardization and sort of verification of credits and projects. And there are some bad players out there, but I think at ClimeCo, we can certainly speak to the presence of very good and trusted players with genuine impact and the need to sort of improve those concerns that are very real. So I don't know, Erika, this is really your world. If you can speak to that at all, but it was very exciting to see many people talking about the VCM as being essential to decarbonization.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exciting. The voluntary carbon market has a lot of different initiatives, as you said, that are kind of raising the bar on what's going to qualify for a credit or an offset in this space. Additionality, quantification, permanence, all of these terms that we use to define what is an offset and what would qualify. The bar is being raised, and we at ClimeCo are very selective in the type of projects that we develop in order to create really high quality credits that we think are essential in a company's decarbonization plan. And often that's, we know you have goals in the future to reduce emissions, but you can be doing things now, and you can be protecting this forest. You can be planting a new forest. You could be avoiding these industrial emissions. You could be creating incentives for low carbon building materials. There's a lot of different activities that are in the voluntary carbon market that are really important, and their action today. And so it's just one part of an overall sustainability plan, right? But I know there are challenges around how to talk about the carbon market and, as a corporate buyer, how to communicate the action that you're doing in this space.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the hesitancies and barriers to progress, right? Is that folks are really just worried about saying the wrong thing. And so we talk about this phenomenon around greenhushing and why that came to be. A lot of that is due to being overly scrutinized for saying the wrong thing. So, I think we, ClimeCo, need to be giving our clients and companies who are participating in the voluntary carbon market the tools they need to be able to communicate around the impact that they are making. Because at the end of the day, the theme of Climate Week this year was it's time, and it is time to make progress now. And we know that the voluntary carbon market can allow us to do that. So why not talk about that and be proud of that? So interestingly, given my background, I was really interested in the communications theme that was present at Climate Week this year. I attended a really neat event around this celebrity that I mentioned who has created an organization that reaches what he calls the movable middle, which is not the climate activists of the world. It's not who we call the climate deniers of the world. Those folks are not able to be influenced, right? But the 20% of the population that has been identified as the movable middle is a real opportunity to be able to make a difference. And so, his organization focuses on creating content that resonates with the movable middle. And so, we can talk about that as an example, but really, even at ClimeCo, it's our sort of job to be educating around these complex decarbonization topics in a way that's digestible and easy for our stakeholders and our clients to understand, and their stakeholders to understand, right? So I do think, ClimeCo takes that very seriously. And I was encouraged to see at Climate Week that there were sort of new types of attendees, even attending these events, influencers even, that are looking to make a difference through communications, and how we communicate authentically really matters. So I was happy to see that play a role at Climate Week this year.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think, so in terms of key themes, we heard Scope 3 decarbonization. We heard the VCM is back and critical to climate goals. Communication is a key piece to both address how do we talk about our climate action, but also how do we influence others to also make those individual and corporate decisions to reduce emissions, to be more efficient, et cetera. The last theme that we talked about was the challenges or the disconnect between goals, climate goals, net zero, 50% reductions, et cetera. And how do you actually get there, that roadmap, right? When the rubber hits the road, it was great that you set that ambitious target, but now that we're taking steps, how do we meet that goal realistically?
Yeah, I think the theme here is really a shift in climate goals and the approaches to those goals. So I saw a lot around how we're communicating our goals and how we're setting our goals or recasting those goals, right? So there's actually a move towards more realistic and practical goals with, target shifting from 1.5 degrees to folks who are saying substantially below 2.0 degrees of warming. So just a little shift in the language there. But again, with that focus on realistic and practical goals. At the same time, there's that sort of push pull that you mentioned, Erika, around the need to make progress now and to set bold goals. At the same time, there's a gap between the solutions are there. That was the other really hopeful thing that we saw out of Climate Week this year, is that there are some very real solutions that exist now to be able to reach our ambitious climate goals. At the same time, we need to be practical about how we get there. So I think, there was that lens applied to all of the conversations. One conversation I attended was around there needs to be a clear business case for climate action within large companies. And one consumer goods company talked about they do not sacrifice the quality of their product or the price of their product for sustainability. And so they needed to innovate their product using science and innovation around innovating the product to be even better than their original product, but also sustainable. So that's really their sort of model that I saw a lot of other companies adopting, is we really need to innovate to be able to provide a sustainable solution to our customers and to our clients that is also superior. So that was another interesting thing that we saw. But again, not backing down on the ambitious goals, knowing that we need to make a lot of progress now that we haven't been making to date.
Yeah, and I think that's aligned with a lot of what we're hearing from the US Department of Energy, right? Is deploy, deploy, deploy. Hey, we have technology, we have solutions. Let's go out and put them in place. We don't need to perfect everything. We have some real solutions today as we're developing what those future technologies can help us continue to advance. And then I think you also mentioned a bit around scenario planning. Did you want to talk about that?
There's a lot of uncertainty around the how, right? I mean, I think this sort of disconnect between having the solutions in front of us and having the goals, the practical goals in front of us, but also not being entirely sure on the how we're going to get there. And I think part of what is affecting that confusion and challenge is around this constantly shifting regulatory and reporting landscape, right? And so that was another theme that popped up a lot at Climate Week today, is that, while reporting frameworks are, maturing and, there's new governance being announced around GHG protocol and all of that, I think, and the need for compliance in many ways. A lot of companies were saying, that all of their resources are being poured into this effort instead of actually making progress today on their goals. One of the ways that we can support companies with this, aside from having a crystal ball and seeing into the future, I know there are a lot of unknowns around, what will happen with the elections, what will these frameworks look like in 2 years from now. I think the answer that we can provide our clients is around how can we help you plan for whatever scenario might happen, right? And so we are working with a lot of our clients around that risk mitigation strategy, and it involves policy, it involves climate risk disclosure, it involves technology that we have access to that will give us good insight into trends that we're seeing in the data. And, we are involved in a lot of working groups that give us a little bit of visibility into what those scenarios could be. So with all of that input, we are developing, a scenario planning offering to help our clients help navigate this complex space that definitely showed up at Climate Week this year. So it was a nice validation to what we're already putting into motion.
Thank you, Emma, so much for sharing both your takeaways from Climate Week and help give some insights to our listeners around what are the trends that could be impacting their business and how can they stay, ahead of both the opportunities and the challenges in this evolving landscape. But I really liked the theme, it's time. So let's move forward, and we're all kind of working together to address this huge challenge.
Thank you so much for having me, Erika.
Whether you're a seasoned ESG practitioner or embarking on your sustainability journey, ESG Decoded is your trusted source for inspiration and actionable insights for responsible business practices. Subscribe on your favorite streaming platforms to be notified of new episodes dropped bi-weekly on Tuesday mornings, and connect with us at ESG Decoded on social media or by visiting www.climeco.com.